The March for Our Lives rallies were held in the wake of last month's deadly shooting at Majory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which left 17 dead. Those local rallies were held in conjunction with the National March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. on Saturday. And our first guests tonight were among the students who traveled from this region to our nation's capital to protest. McKaylee Cookus, Olivia Enda, and Camilla Quetti, all seniors at Pittsfield High School, discussed why the school shooting in Florida inspired them to action.
Well, this incident, it just hits close to home for us because it was students our age and it's something we can relate to. And we've had our fair share of gun violence in our town as well, in Pittsfield. So we just wanted to take the opportunity, like being inspired by the Parkland leaders, to have our voices be heard in our hometown and get our community involved.
Because there was a protest in Pittsfield on Saturday as well, sort of in support of the March for Our Lives in Washington. But what you all did is you worked together and organized a bus trip to D.C., right? Why did you decide to go to D.C. instead of staying in Pittsfield?
Well, we've been having like a lot of like community support, and a lot of our parents and family members have been pushing us to like really stay involved and keep this message going. And we did make our statement within Pittsfield, and we thought, why not represent the city of Pittsfield and take it down to DC if we had the opportunity? And we really worked hard to grant all the support to have this opportunity, so we figured why not.
And then once you got to DC on Saturday, what was it like there on the ground? What were you hearing and seeing?
So we arrived at the RFK Stadium. We were dropped off there, and so we had to walk a little bit to get to the actual march. So in like the hours of walking, we experienced a lot of community welcoming. There were people on the streets giving us supplies, allowing us to use their restrooms, totally for the movement that we were a part of and the march that we were headed towards. And as we got to the march, it was just full of everyone that had the same voice that we do. It was just numerous people sharing the same ideals. And we were fortunate enough to speak with people that we were surrounded by and get to know other organizations that were coming down for the same exact reasons.
Was there anything that you heard from the speakers in D.C. that really stuck with you that you've been thinking about since Saturday? You're smiling. You go ahead.
I just remember the quote that keeps running through my mind is, "We are the cure," and as the cure, it's our generation that has the opportunity to step forward, and it just kind of made me feel like there is a problem and we're going to fix it, type thing. So.
Either of you, anything else?
Yeah, one of the speakers actually said, "This is not a moment, it's a movement," and that really stuck with me because I think people expect as teens that we're just gonna give up after a while, like we're just gonna lose our attention from this, but it's something that's actually really important to us, and we're not gonna stop until we see policy change and things pass in government.
And how about for you?
And a little less specific as Olivia and Camilla, but each speech followed the idea that from here on out, there's no more. Like this was the beginning of what we're about to encounter. And I think following that idea, it just is stuck with all of us. And we actually had a group discussion on the bus about it, where it's just, from here on out, we take action. We don't just sit back and watch. And I think that was a tremendous thing to follow throughout the entire march.
The Berkshires is a relatively rural area, so there are some hunters who live there, as is the case in Western Massachusetts. Have you heard from students who have opposing points of view than the three of you or the others who've helped to organize this? And how are you, chatting with them about this issue?
So we opened up a public Facebook group to kind of like grant our attention and our startup to our movement that we wanted to start with, not only in our school but within our community. And that started off with generally students, but having, again, a public Facebook group, we did have some of our students and like some community members speak out against what we wanted to do, and kind of like went with the general idea of, oh, we're just kids, or you guys have your ideas messed up, you guys not sure what you're doing, all that type of stuff. And we just at first it kind of hurt us because we were just like, well, this is such an important thing. Why would anyone want to like step in front of it? But we did decide to be the bigger people and kind of respond in such a way that accepted their idea while also being able to push us and motivate us to go forward. So it was pretty interesting.
Either of you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think we did have a few students speak out against what we were doing. But in regards to that, it was challenging, but it was also enlightening for us because it gave us more to think about. Because when we went into this, we really did not, we know there are various perspectives out there, but we didn't open our minds necessarily to the idea that once we begin this project in our own community, we're going to get the negative commentary. We weren't ready for that. So having students our own age begin that for us was at first like it struck us pretty surprisingly, but then once we got it, it almost strengthened our arguments because we knew the areas we needed to further our research in and how we could approach those comments. So it was a wake-up call.
There's been criticism from adults, too, who say, to your point, that you're young. The three of you are 18. Some people involved in this movement, there was an 11-year-old who spoke out at the march on Saturday. You're too young. You should be focusing on your studies. What would you say to that?
I don't think there's such a thing as being too young for this. It affects us, so I think our voices are the best ones to be leading this movement. We're the ones in school. We know how it feels, and we just want to be safe in school. It's not, there's no way to be too young to know that you want to feel safe.
Do you feel safe in school right now? Did this make you nervous after this latest shooting?
A little bit, actually. Like before, we live in a generally safe community. Yes, we've had our fair share of shootings and whatnot, but it wasn't something that always went through my mind while I'm in AP Psych.
And to be clear, not shootings at school, but you mean within the community?
Yes. Something's gonna happen, or once I get out of school, am I gonna walk home and hear like a shooting? And there's the typical thoughts that I previously thought of, but now it's always like a little bit in the back of my head. If that could happen in Florida, a nice area and a pretty affluent community, could happen here too. So it's just like something that's in the back of my head now.
Has this been something that you've talked about with your teachers or leaders at the school to say, hey, I'm a little uneasy, what should I do? Or what are we doing about this?
Yeah, so we can't say prior to the movement itself, prior to the Parkland students standing up for all of this, that we did have discussion really about this, but after we led our first walkout on February 27th and the memorial event, we then had meetings with our principals and some of our staff advisory to discuss how can we further the safety in our own school. We actually held an assembly for 9th through 12th grade at our high school to go over some of the policies we have and why they're in place. And we were given the opportunity to speak there so that students our own age are like, we're also their age and we're speaking as to why we need the safety. So it's like they can reflect on us with their voices being heard too.
Are there opportunities or are there things that you wish that the school was doing to make you feel more safe that you feel like aren't going on quite yet?
I feel like after the Parkland shooting, our school really reflected on everything they were doing, and I think they acted quickly to change it, which is really great for us. Like McKaylee said, we had the assembly going over all the safety policies, and we buzz in at the front door and everything now, and you have to say your name. So I think they did try to make things feel a little safer for students.
We have about 30 seconds left. What's next? Where do you go next with this movement?
So after this, we have more meetings with our representatives. We were fortunate enough to meet with Congressman Neal a few weeks back, but we're planning to meet with him again. And we also want to further our argument by meeting with an NRA representative to find more of a defense and also figure out what we need to be speaking out more on. And then also organizing more things in our community. We have a voter registration day at our high school on April 6th that'll get more people to vote. And it's just all about taking small steps to get us to where we need to be on the higher level.